Okay, welcome once again to a live stream from the Baiting Hollow Hummingbird Sanctuary. Tonight we're starting by looking at Jupiter, and we have simultaneously a view of Jupiter through the video camera and also through the main telescope. Video camera on the left, main telescope view on the right. And in the video camera view we can make out, and I'll point out, Ganymede, that's the brightest, largest moon of Jupiter, and then here, close to Jupiter, Io. The other two Galilean moons are drowned out in the brightness of Jupiter. However, in the right here, we have a view that shows all four Galilean moons, Jupiter itself, of course, here, Ganymede here, Io here, and here, very close to Jupiter, we have Europa, and then a little bit further out, and a little bit of an angle, Callisto. That's rather unusual. They're usually in a straight line. I'm going to see if I can bring out, with a little bit of extra exposure, a little bit more of those two fainter moons. There we go. So now here you can see Europa and Callisto. So these are the moons of Jupiter. And the view through the video camera on the left really shows just Ganymede here, and tucked in very close to Jupiter we can see Io. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is greatly reduce the exposure so we can start to pick out some of the surface details on Jupiter using the main telescope. So I'm just going to lower the gain drastically until we start to pick up Jupiter's colors and the belts, and there we go. Not too bad, but of course I now need to zoom in so you can see those belts quite nicely, and you can even see Io off to the left. So let me point these features out. Here is Jupiter with its various belts, the two equatorial belts, and here, rather faint now because we've lowered the exposure, you can just about make out Io here. And indeed, you can just about make out both Europa and Callisto there. And in fact, I'm actually going to take a video now because it's quite nice. Get rid of this stuff here. So we're looking at Jupiter, and it's and we can actually see three of its moons on the right through the main telescope, although the moons are very faint, and then in a much higher exposure view and a lower power view through the video camera we can see Ganymede, Io, and the pointer arrow is pointing at Io, and also Jupiter itself, of course. Now let me get rid of my pointer here, because we really don't want that on our field of view here. And Jupiter is moving around a little bit, but it's not too bad. And we've really got quite a nice view of the bands tonight. The belts, I should call them belts because that's their proper name. Okay. Okay, so what I'd like to point out is that as far as I can make out, comparing this to Stellarium, this is actually the northern equatorial belt. This is the southern equatorial belt, and round about there is the great red spot. It's very close. You can see it, a hint of it just there. I'm afraid sometimes when I move the pointer it causes the app to crash. It's very annoying, but there you go. You can see a hint of the great red spot, but you know, in a video view it's really difficult to see that. But still, I do quite like the video view. There are hundreds of great pictures of Jupiter and its belts, the red spot and shadows of the moons, but nothing quite like seeing a live view of Jupiter itself. And in this particular case, we can see Io, one of the moons of Jupiter, and very faintly, if you put your thumb or your finger over the Jupiter itself, you can see here Europa and Callisto, which is a lot of fun, really. I'm going to center Jupiter a little bit more and go to an even higher power view. So I need to move Jupiter down just a little bit, and I've gone the wrong way, of course, as always. I really have to get better at this positioning. I always forget what the arrows mean. So I need to go down, not up, not too far. Okay, and now I've gone too far. And now we can go to a higher power view. Excellent. There you can see Jupiter in all his majesty. I'm going to try and get him to go down just a tad more. Yeah. Jupiter in all his majesty. You can see the two equatorial bands. I believe it's the north equatorial band on the left and the south equatorial band on the right. However, it is a little bit odd that normally the two bands, the two belts, north and south equatorial belts, are of equal thickness, but we're definitely seeing, and I think the interpretation of that is that the north equatorial band is actually made up of two separate bands, which we can't quite resolve in this image here. That's my suspicion here. Now I'm going to try and play just a tiny bit with the colours. If I can figure this out. I'm going to increase the red and see whether that helps pick out those bands at all. Those belts. I must call them belts, that's the correct way. That's a little bit too red, but we'll leave it at that. Now, in the main telescope view, you can see the couple of the moons, and in fact I might be able to zoom in a little bit more here so that you can see more clearly those two moons here of Jupiter. Here is Ganymede, which is almost always the brightest of all the 4 Galilean moons that are easy to see, because Ganymede is the largest moon, and then quite close to Jupiter is Io. Okay, but of course, because of the high exposure, you can't see the bands here, and I'm not going to attempt to see the bands because really the video camera is not built to see the bands. Having said that, I am tempted, sorely tempted, to have a go. Here we go. I have to lower the exposure on the video camera, which is not something I usually do because I have it at a very high sensitivity to pick up faint stars, but we'll give it a go. Let's have a look here. Okay, as you can see, I have managed to lower the gain. And you can sort of see a bit of a hint that there's quite a bit of chromatic aberration on this video camera at very high gain, so unless I can get the focus a little bit sharper. See, as I change the focus, the chromatic aberration changes a little bit there, and I do think I had it about ideal. Maybe I can go back down even more with the exposure. But no, it's really not built to look at that level of detail. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the maximum possible values here. 1/6 of a second exposure. The maximum gain here. And the maximum aperture. Because these things allow me to pick up we could go even higher here. Over 2.8, there we go. This is the max. Meanwhile, Jupiter itself is not quite as clear at the beginning because it is getting lower in the sky, and that certainly makes it more difficult to see what's going on. Okay. Couple this piece in here. And we'll put these pieces in here. And then maybe we'll put these in here. See whether we can get this guy again. Okay, so that's a good view of Jupiter. Let's take a quick peek at Saturn because it can get even lower, but it's certainly worthwhile doing. So we'll go to here, and Saturn is next in the list. I'm going to zoom out with the main with the video camera, so you can see Jupiter and some of the surrounding stars there. And now we're going to move to Saturn. Jupiter goes off down there, Saturn comes in here. I love the way that they position themselves. And now we can zoom in on Saturn. Now it is trying to center again. It usually does that. It doesn't get it spot on the first time, and it then does a second attempt. And that's entirely normal. Target is centered, and we can actually see it here. And I'm going to lower the... However, it is somewhat dimmer than Jupiter. I'm going to remove that reddish coloration, which I don't think we really want. Take that down to 50, so that should be more or less neutral here. That looks good. We're going to reposition here, like that. Maybe I always tend to overdo it. And we're going to increase the gain to pick up more of Saturn. Of course, I'm not increasing the gain, I'm changing the color balance because I'm always a little bit clumsy. And now we're increasing the gain. And now we can zoom in on Saturn. There we go, there's Saturn tonight. And I'm going to brighten Saturn up a little bit further. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in on Saturn on the video camera and see whether we can pick up any of the moons there. And I actually suspect that the moon is there and that this guy is actually not a moon, it's a star. Okay, but I won't go through my, well, I will after looking at the rings for a while. I will brighten up the exposure further and we'll see if we can actually pick up a couple of the moons of Saturn. But Saturn is getting quite low in the western sky, south, west, west, so that does make it more difficult to figure out, to see the details. We'll bump up the magnification one more notch. Okay, so what's next? I think now we'll have a quick look at, we want something that's reasonably bright so we can look at it in video mode. Well, going to try for the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules, okay? So I'm going to go back to here. I'm looking to have a look where Neptune is. In fact, why don't we have an attempt to pick out Neptune, because it's reaching its maximum height and it's possible that we'll be able to pick it out. So I'll lower the magnification in the video camera view, Okay, and we will zoom over to Neptune. You see stars whizzing by. On the video camera view. How are we going to succeed in picking up Neptune or not? There are so many things that can go wrong. I think the telescope is going the long way round. There's another star that just zoomed by. We'll zoom out a little bit there. Okay, so it's got the right ascension correct, but it's now adjusting declination. And it's getting closer and closer and closer. And now, having arrived where it thinks it's located, it's checking, and it's decided it wasn't quite centered, so it's recentering. And now it is centered. Okay. And as you can see, there is something in there. I know that this is at the limit of the video camera's view. Let's zoom in. So, the question is that Neptune? And the only way to find out is, well, there are several ways to find out, none of them certain, but we're going to take a long exposure view now of this field of view through the main telescope. And that may well be Neptune. And if so, it seems to be accompanied by a moon. Let's now switch to the live view. And we're going to have to max out the gain. And that looks very much like Neptune, my friends. That beautiful blue color is quite unmistakable, although it's not exactly centered, and I'm going to try and recenter. Well, I still think that's Neptune. Let's try and zoom in a little bit more here. Not quite that much. Okay. And I'm going to try now and adjust the position slightly here to get it a little bit closer to center. It does look very much like Neptune to me, but so we want to make it go down a little bit, like that. And we, not too much, not too much. And we want to make it go to the left a little bit. There. And now we'll go into the high power view. So there we have it tonight, Neptune. Okay. Now, I would be even more convinced if it's in the right position relative to some of the faint surrounding stars. So we'll try and check on that. Okay. To do that, I need to zoom out a bit. Can we see any convincing stars? No, but we'll try a long exposure view now. We'll go to preview, and we'll take a 2-second view again. Okay. First of all, in this longer exposure view, what is the most likely candidate is Triton there. So that allows me to orient this correctly. Okay, like that. And then I can zoom out and compare that with our stars, and there is a perfect match. Absolutely spot on. Okay, so indeed that is Triton and that is Neptune, and that is very nice. So let's now zoom in a little bit and take a picture. It's a 2-second exposure of Neptune. Okay, and now we'll go back to the video view, and I really would like to try and pull that guy out here. So what I'm going to try doing is binning. It increases our sensitivity, although it lowers our resolution. So let's have a look what we see here. And of course we do have to zoom in. Problematic, huh? What we need to do is increase the exposure here. We can certainly go up to 200 there. Even longer. Now we're starting to pick it out. Yeah, there it is. Let me go to 500. Okay, very nice. I'll go all the way up to 500 milliseconds, because I can always speed up the video later. I went too far. Okay, so now we'll start the camera rolling. We're looking at Neptune and its moon Triton. And you can even see Neptune in the video camera view on the left. I'll point it out. There we have Neptune, and I can zoom out and show you some of the nearby stars. There's one there, and there's another one there. And indeed, I can identify both of those stars on Stellarium. So that further confirms that we are seeing Neptune live in the video camera as well. And that's fairly remarkable because it is not bright. I believe its magnitude is close to 8. Let me just have a look here. Yeah, magnitude 7.85. And of course, this is the furthest known solar planet from the Sun. It is 17 times the mass of the Earth. And not only are we seeing Neptune, but we're also seeing its accompanying moon, Triton. I'm sure it has other moons as well, lots of them, but Triton is by far the biggest and easiest to see. So we're continuing to run here, taking a video of Neptune and its moon Triton. And in the lower power view, that is Neptune there. Oh, a satellite just went by on the video camera view. Now, it turns out that quite close to Neptune is an extremely faint galaxy, but we're not going to be able to see it. It's 15.5, absolutely at the limits of my telescope, and we wouldn't really know that we were seeing it, but it is very close. I'll show you where it is. It's very close to this star here. It will be round about there. What I'm tempted to do is to go for that star there. Is that possible here? Interesting. It did show up the that thing that streaked through. Okay, and what's this over here? Another galaxy. The sky is packed with galaxies. But again, it's 15.5 and we're not going to be able to see it. But I might give it a go. Is it got a reasonable number? It's MCG. Well, that's when I get to be more ambitious. Okay, so that's enough video of Neptune with its moon Triton. I'm absolutely delighted that we were able to see Neptune so clearly tonight. Neptune and Triton appear to be separated by roughly, I would say, 3 seconds of arc. Now let's have a look over here and see whether that checks out here. Okay, and we put the grids on here, and that's 0.6, that's 20. And that might not be too far off actually. Let's see whether we can go in further here. 15, 20. Yeah, maybe it's 5 seconds of arc. Oops, what's gone wrong here? Stop this here and go back out. Find Neptune there. Okie dokie. So, having looked at Neptune and Triton, and that's quite nice, let's see what else is in the offing here. Okay, so tonight's best. Uranus is visible. It's actually a little bit higher than Neptune, but it will get better a little bit later. So let's go down this list. A lot of this stuff is too big for my telescope, unfortunately. This is something that even the Andromeda Galaxy there is really too big to be worth while trying again. We've done it many times. So I don't like things that are too big. Triangulum. Triangulum is well placed. We could have a look at Triangulum. Why don't we have a go to Triangulum? We did that last night, but it's always nice to try again. So I'm going to zoom out on the video camera so we can see more stars in the vicinity of Neptune. Something like that maybe. And then I'm going to press the green button and go to the Triangulum. Switch these around here because I want to go to here, split screen. Okay, there it is. Of course, can't see very much in the video camera view. Let's zoom in and see whether we can pick anything up here. Usually there's a faintest hint of a smudge. Okay. And right there in the center there is a faint hint of a smudge. But over on the video camera view, we can just about make out the center of the triangulum. But in order to see it better, I'm going to increase the exposure even further, all the way up to the max. Now, let's see whether that allows us to pick up anything of the triangulum. And yes, we can see some hints of the triangulum there. So that's quite nice. I mean, it's not super obvious, I agree, but it is there, and I'm actually going to take a video of the triangulum. Triangulum Galaxy is close to the Andromeda Galaxy. The whole galaxy more or less fills the field of view here. And in fact, I might show you the whole field of view, because there's nothing really on the video camera there. So now we're looking at the Triangulum Galaxy, and the brightest part of the galaxy, of course, is dead center, where the telescope is centered. But the galaxy itself extends over almost the whole field of view. And it's updating just over once every second. No, just under once every second. But that's fine, because I will speed up the video and post it separately, the speeded up version, so it will look like a real video. You can even see a hint of the swirl of the arms. So I'm actually now going to dredge up the picture I took yesterday of the triangulum, and we can compare it. Okay, so go to photos here, photo library, and where was the triangulum? Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to I can't. Okay, I now know how I can do that. So we're looking at the Triangulum Galaxy,